Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson number 17, and really this is kind of an end to our first section of our music production and Bitwig Studio course. When I first started this, I originally thought, within the second or third video, we would be inside of Bitwig and we'd be making music and doing lots of fun stuff. And then I quickly realized that it just wasn't going to really work like that. In order to make music, I feel like there are some basics that are going to be pretty helpful in terms of understanding what it is you're doing and just having a little bit of that vocabulary to start out with. Now, I'm never saying don't just go in and start experimenting, because I really think that's important, and I encourage you to do that if you have the demo or if you've bought Bitwig Studio. I hope you already have gone in and have just kind of experimented around and tried to come up with something that's inspiring to you. At the same time, though, hopefully my videos can be a bit of a resource to you guys in trying to find a little bit of a logic to how to go about things, whether you are new to music production or you're just new to Bitwig Studio, or you don't fit either of those categories, but you're just interested to take your knowledge of music production, digital audio, all of these things, and you want to take it a little bit further. And hopefully you've realized that it's very easy for us to go off on different tangents in this field. It's really multidisciplinary in a number of ways, and it's hard to cover one thing without feeling the need to cover something else. So it's like the second we started to delve into digital audio, I realized immediately, well, how can we talk about digital audio without comparing it to analog audio? But to do that, we kind of have to talk about the basic differences between digital and analog and talk about how sound actually works in the analog world versus how we can bring it into the digital world and manipulate it. And that's all well and good. But then when we start to transition into other topics like relative loudness, or we did our whole Foundations of Sound series, it's almost obvious that there's a lot of different roads you need to go down, because when we talked about timbre and we talked about harmonics, suddenly it becomes a question of music theory. And it would have been very easy for us at the end of that timbre video to go down a completely different rabbit hole and start videos and videos on music theory and how music theory would be relevant to us working in Bitwig Studios. But to talk about music theory, we also need to kind of talk about music history and bring all that into the fold and say, okay, well, how is this theory actually relevant to any of the music that's been made the past 2,000 years or however long? And it's hard. I think I've realized it's so hard, and it's the joy of doing this, but it's also difficult to know when too much is too much and when too little is too little. So this first section here is really an introduction, not a whole lot more than that. Some of the topics we covered: nature of sound, analog versus digital, sampling rates, bit depth, file compression, all in the digital domain, plugins, a very basic just overview of what a plugin is, what is a digital audio workstation, and we also compared some different digital audio workstations and decided that we were going to choose Bitwig for our lessons going forward. And really that's all we've covered. And somehow that's taken like 9.5 hours to do. Probably a little bit of that is because I'm not the greatest teacher at these things. This is my first time trying to do something like this, and it's kind of awkward just like sitting in a chair here in my studio and talking to nobody. But hopefully you've gotten something out of it, and as long as you've gotten at least one thing out of all of these videos, I'm very happy, and I hope you guys are happy to maybe have learned something new or seen an example in a way that you've never seen it before. So we've only really scratched the surface of these topics, and if they do interest you further, I would encourage you to research them. And now you should be equipped with that basic vocabulary to know how to go about doing that research. And with the basics that you have now, understanding the more technical and more complex nuances of these things should be a little bit easier. And you can even start by just either doing a simple search in a search engine, whether that's Google or Bing or whatever it is you happen to use, or you can even go down to your library and just search like digital audio, or whatever topic we've talked about that's been interesting to you so far. And you'd be surprised that there are sometimes some pretty good resources right there at the library that you would never have expected to be there. I know I've been surprised before by some of the stuff that's been in my public library. And sometimes you can get a whole lot more out of that than you would ever expect. So I wanted to end with some parting thoughts here, because I don't really know if there's ever going to be another appropriate forum to discuss some of these things. I'm assuming that this video here is only going to be watched by people who have gone through and watched all these other videos in series. And so I think you guys might be a little more open to hearing some of my ideas and my philosophies as compared to in the future when we make videos that chances are we're going to get one-time viewers coming in because they want an instant result. They want to see specifically, how does this happen? How do I do this? How do I do this? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think for the people who are really passionate about this and who have been able to sit through all of my videos and all of my ramblings just for the sake of trying to learn something, that what I'm about to say might be more helpful than any of the technical videos that we do moving forward. The first thing is just kind of my own opinion and just a little bit of my own whining like a baby, but I did want to bring this up because it's something that you'll find a number of times if you do research on your own, and that's this idea of when you're producing music, that production process is your workflow. And you'll find a lot of tips and tricks on how to maximize your workflow or make your workflow faster, things like this. And really, I like to avoid that word at all costs. And I don't think I've even said it yet here because I don't know, for some reason, just the diction, just the idea of workflow to me sounds like something very automated, something very fake, not incredibly organic, and something that, I don't know, it just makes it sound like there's a factory line, that this idea of work, to me, it just always makes it feel like, you know, there's this pressure to not be incredibly creative and to follow a set plan and to follow a set rule and a set way of doing something. And sometimes those common workflow techniques are things like design a template or, you know, save this, and this so that you can just drop it in. Change some of your preferences to make everything go a lot faster. A lot of times, workflow is another word for just saying speed. And I don't think that's good at all. And I don't really want you guys falling into a trap that you have to work really, really quick and you have to know a program inside and out to make really great music. That's not true at all. And my theory and my philosophy is it's more about the process than it is about the product. And I wrote the process, not the product. And let's think about it this way. And I always like to compare things to art in a very physical sense, meaning like visual art, studio arts. We'll just say, for example, that we're all great oil painters, for example. I have never heard an artist in my entire life refer to what they do and the way they go about it as workflow. I've never heard that. I've only heard that in like the past 5 years, and it always is about making music in the computer specifically. I don't hear too many singer-songwriters talking about their workflow. And so for us as artists and making music, especially what we're doing here, it's all about sort of creating stuff from scratch. Then we shouldn't be referring to what we do as a workflow either, because what we're going to do is going to be very unique and very personal to ourselves. And like a lot of artists, that's more of a process. It's that artistic process, and it's the process that really differentiates one artist from another, and at times is what can make maybe one artist be a little bit more interesting than another, at least to some of us. It's all opinion-based, obviously. So when we're working, and if we are great painters or something, we're going to have to go through a lot of processes of sketching, of studying, of doing some improvisation, revisiting certain things, reinterpreting them, going back to our sketches, going back to our studies before we ever put oil to canvas. Is this true every time? Absolutely not. But the process varies from person to person. And it's a very, very unique and just a very personal process all the way through. So just as an example here, like always, somehow I bring you guys to things you would never expect to be talked about. This is a painting by Edgar Degas, Dance Rehearsal. It's actually in the Phillips collection here in DC. So I've been lucky enough to see some of these paintings firsthand. And when you look at these on a computer, it just does it absolutely no justice. So it is hard to kind of visualize what this is in real life because it's, again, a very real world, very physical process, and it's been totally digitized. And so you don't get the same sort of feel or experience by looking on a computer, but we'll leave that for the side. So this is a finished painting. This is an oil painting, and it's very complex. There's a lot going on here. And in my opinion, it's actually a complete masterpiece, especially when you see it in real life. The color and the vibrancy of it is nothing like what you see here in this picture. But Degas didn't just one day say, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do and complete this oil painting. He went through a series of sketches. And you look at this, and you look at this, and you say, is this the same guy? How did he do this? And he also would do things like this. He did some sculptures. These are all involving the same subject. It's all involving ballerinas and the dance. Part of that was because he was, a bit of a creep probably, but at the same time, an absolutely brilliant artist. I'm not sure if you can necessarily forgive him for the other, but obviously art history has done that because he is really a genius in his own right. And why does this matter to us if we're making music? And I think it does for a number of reasons. The first reason is that things have changed just in terms of creation. Whereas before, it wasn't really possible for everybody to make music, but it was always possible for people to pick up a pen and a piece of paper and draw. And so for a long time, really, creation has been through the studio arts. But that's completely changed. It's now becoming more of a yuppie type thing, and it's very, very expensive, and the art world is probably more cutthroat and more, forgive my language, but just more bullshit than what you even see in the music production world and the music business, which is pretty, insane in its own right. But now things have changed. Our canvas is becoming the blank project in a digital audio workstation. And I say that because suddenly everybody has access to make music. Everyone has access to samples. If you have a computer, if you have the internet, and you have a digital audio workstation, you can make compelling and interesting and important music where I honestly would not be able to afford to paint the sort of things I would want to do. It would cost me a ton more money per year than what I have to spend to make music. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to just jump in and every time try to make a, club banger or whatever, a top 40 on Beatport. I have to go through, I have to do sketches, I have to do some sculpting from time to time, I have to revisit these things, and if you just search Edgar Degas studies, you'll come across hundreds and hundreds of studies he's done before I'm ever really able to get to this point to making a finished product that's polished, that's complete. This is really, if we could compare it to something, I don't know. It's hard to come up with a song that everybody knows and can agree on is like really good. But the truth be told about this painting, not everyone's going to look at this and say it's great. Let's use a very simple track like Eric Pryd's Call on Me or his piano track. I'm sure many of you guys have heard that. That is a finished product, and in of itself, it seems very, very simple. And when you look at some of the Degas paintings, you think that's not too complex. But the amount of time that man must have spent learning everything he needed to learn, going through, doing sketches, doing studies, etc., was probably a very, very long time. And it wasn't like one morning he just got up and said, I'm going to make piano or I'm going to make Call on Me and it's going to be a huge hit. No, making the simpler things and making them good is a skill that very, very few of us are ever going to possess. And similar in the realm of painting and what we've seen in art history. So I did just want to kind of bring that up as an example for you guys. over to maybe some more kind of philosophical type things and things I find very important. I believe very strongly that the only failure is actually quitting. And it's going to take you guys, especially if you're new to this, a very long time. And anybody who's been doing this for a long time will probably agree in the comments. It takes a very long time before you make something that you really like. And it's especially true if you're starting from complete scratch. So if you're not using a lot of like processed samples or sample packs, but you're kind of just going in with that blank slate mentality, that blank canvas, and getting to work, it's hard to make something that you really like because you have a taste and you know exactly what you're trying to do, but to actually do it are very different things. And it's quite difficult to get those sounds and those brilliant ideas you have in your head out into a digital audio workstation right away. And we're going to be going through very slowly in our lessons, kind of building up that vocabulary, building up those lessons by putting a ton of constraints on what you have to work with so that you're not going to be quite as disappointed as I know I was when I first started, and even as I am constantly today when I'm working on my own projects and stuff. I get quite disappointed that it's not coming out exactly like I want, but it just takes a lot of time. And the only time that I think those things are failures, well, I never think they're failures, but the only time that I want you to ever think that you're failing is if you're quitting. So don't quit if at all possible, and don't worry about it if it's not perfect right away. It's going to take time, and most people, like 99% of people, are eventually going to quit. They're going to have enough and say, I really can't do that. And to me, that's failure. But otherwise, it's all just, it's not even mistakes. It's just experiences. And you're learning from those experiences, and you're getting better, and you're getting stronger. So I just want you to realize that if you've been doing this for months and months and months, and you're still like, why are these things not sounding like I want them to? Don't worry about it. It just takes time. It just means a little more time. You just got to roll up your sleeves, keep trying your best, and know that eventually it will happen because it has to. So that brings me up to my next point, which is support. And we won't talk about this too in depth, but I could tell you guys my own story. And let me just say this, unless you're very lucky, very few people around you will probably support or understand what you're doing. Most people will claim that they are very supportive and they're interested in what you're doing, but I found that's not really true. They're supportive and then they listen to something you've made and they're like, oh, that's terrible. That sounds nothing like I hear on the radio. And then they kind of will try to get in your head. And you have to work really hard not to let that happen. And I know that where I am, there's nobody around here, or that no one I know that's interested in the same stuff that I'm doing, at least with music and music production. I come from a very different world, especially professionally, where the people who are into the other sort of work that I do are never probably going to be that interested in making music or composition or any of the questions that we've been posing and sort of working towards here in this course so far. So do your best to not let that negativity get to you. And remember, just keep trying. Don't quit, because quitting is failing, but everything else is making you a lot stronger and making you better. And I think if you've been patient enough to watch all these videos and you're still interested and you're still watching this one, then I really do believe in you 100%. And I'm not just saying that. I'm not just trying to make that sound corny, but truthfully, to go through these videos means you really have a passion to learn and to improve in this particular area. And this may not be the right area for you. There might be something else that you find you're more passionate about and you totally forget this stuff. And that's fine. That's perfect. But if you are really interested in this and you've dealt with some of my crap and my ramblings and going on, then I really do feel like you can do it and you can get better, you can get stronger, and you can make something that you're very proud of and you have a lot of fun doing it. It might sound like really, really corny, but I think if you don't have any self-doubt or if you don't question what you're doing, especially when it's something like creating, like trying to create music, then your art is going to reflect that. And it's probably going to be a very poor reflection, Just like if you kind of take the easy way, everybody can tell. And you have to know that it's okay to struggle and to not make something great for a very long time. Because when you do make that something that is really great, it's going to be very unique and it's going to be a reflection of you. And that's why we do this. That's really the reason why I'm doing this, is because I want you guys to get to that point and to be very happy with something that you've created, because we all have something interesting to create. And like I said before, in the past, it would probably be more something on canvas or maybe another area, but now suddenly music is the thing that we can all do. And it's not like some people are born better at this than other. That's completely ridiculous. I also encourage you guys to ask the right questions, whether those are to yourself or to someone else. Like always, if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask about anything, and I'll always try to give my best answer. You may not really care, but I think it is important to even ask yourself the right questions. And I think why questions are typically the best questions you can ask in this particular area of study. So from the one extreme of just, why am I doing this? Why do I want to make music? Why am I spending all this time and energy doing something that's not coming out like I want it to? You have to ask that question and you have to answer it, and answer it as honestly as possible. And there are not really any bad answers to that question. You could have a ton of different answers to it, and it's fine as long as that reason for why is strong enough to make you keep going. But you can ask things a little bit more descriptive to, like, why does a saw wave sound the way it does? And we looked at the saw wave in a different video, and now we kind of can understand to some degree why it sounds the way it does. But even then, there are more and more why questions you can ask. Try your best, and I'm guilty of this. A lot of us are guilty of this, of asking the how questions. So, for example, like a question, how do I make a Skrillex style talking bass? There's nothing wrong with asking that question. There's nothing wrong with figuring that out and watching somebody do it. But that's never going to be as helpful as asking why. So if you look at that, you look at it and the person's going through and they're making it, and you might have a lot of those why questions, which is great. Like, why are you choosing this? Why are you choosing that? And if your head is instantly triggering those why questions, you're in the right place and you're on the right path, versus just, syncing up your synthesizer with the stuff that the other person is doing and being very happy and thinking that you've suddenly created this great patch, when no, the person who created the patch made that great patch and you've just kind of copied it. Again, I'm not trying to say that there's anything wrong with that, because there isn't anything wrong with that. It all depends on how you decide to use it, because you could use it in a very interesting way and that would be perfectly fine. But the deeper you get into this, the more why questions you're going to ask, and really the more questions you're going to have. And that's the beauty of music production. That's the beauty of trying to make music. And that's why we do what we do, because it's all about asking those questions and trying our best to answer those things. So I do thank you guys so much for sticking it out for this entire first little section we've had. I'm going to go in actually once this is posted up and change the titles of all the videos. So it's going to be like 1.00, 1.01, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't really know how I'm going to do transitions beyond that, but this seemed like a very logical place to just kind of step back, take a time out, look at what we've covered so far, because it's been a lot, and get ready to move forward. So let's keep going. I hope you guys are as excited as I am right now, and I look forward to reading any of your comments or thoughts as we continue to move forward. Thanks a lot.